do you ever just... I'm fine. I'm totally fine. As Star Wars fans, we have to suffer through a lot of very emotional moments. The entire Skywalker saga is quite tragic, but there's so much else that's also very sad. I'll be going through a lot of sad moments, but I will leave 4 very special ones to the very end, because they are the only ones that have made me shed a tear or two, and I'm not a person who cries very easily, so that's some sort of indicator that for me it really hit where it hurts. First up, we have moments from the films themselves. We'll begin at the very start of the Skywalker saga with The Phantom Menace and the Duel of the Fates. And here the sad part is obviously Qui-Gon's death. And honestly, from an average moviegoer's point of view, it's not that sad because it's surrounded by victories and happy events. But if you've gotten to know Qui-Gon outside of the films, and really like his character, then this has the potential to be a very sad moment. Then we have Darth Vader's, or I guess at that point Anakin Skywalker's death at the end of episode 6. This is kind of a bittersweet moment because he is redeemed and he gets to see his son with his own eyes, but he still, well, dies. At the same time, you know, there was no other choice, he basically had to die. The final confrontation between Luke and Vader is really the culmination of the Skywalker saga, and with everything that happened before this event, it's just very emotional. What else can you say? Then we have one of my favorite Star Wars films, Rogue One, and from this one I've actually picked a couple moments, and the first one is Galen Erso's death. And it's a bit strange that you can be so moved by the death of a character that we barely got to know, but there are a couple of things that make it possible. First of all, throughout the film we get to see that Galen was a truly good person. Another thing is that most of us have parents or are even parents ourselves, and therefore we can better relate to and understand the pain that these characters feel in this moment. The third thing is that it's just an overall very tragic event, because Galen basically dies because of the rebellion bombarding the platform he was standing on, and he was just moments away from reuniting with his daughter for good. Continuing with Rogue One, we have K2SO's death, and I won't spend too much time on this, but I feel like this is a really sad one. Mostly because I'm totally biased and K2 is my favorite droid, but also because this is one of the only major droid deaths that we see on the big screen. Sorry to all B1 battle droids, but I don't consider you major characters.
Uh-oh.
And I don't count L3 because, well, it's L3. Enough said. Then to the last Rogue One moment, which is Jyn's and Cassian's last moments. It's a very beautiful moment in a way, and it's a very peaceful scene. At the same time, it's also very heartbreaking, but I do think it's kind of the perfect ending for these characters, and you would rather die like that and not by being a rebel soldier on the same ship as Darth Vader. Then we are moving on to the death of Han Solo. Personally, I didn't feel too sad about this, but I know that others did. And I can see why. Obviously, Han is an iconic character, and of course it's sad to see how he got killed by his own son, who he still obviously cares for a lot. Different people have different opinions. I would love to know what you think are the saddest moments in Star Wars. Let me know in the comments. Then we have the moment where Rey goes back to Tatooine, and even though my first watching of Rise of Skywalker was not the best, this moment still got me a little bit. We are returning to where it all started, and the burial of the lightsabers is kind of like a metaphor to saying goodbye to the Skywalker saga. But then we have the event which will never not upset me. Order 66. There are so many layers to this, we'll get to some of that later, but now we just have the Order 66 sequence in Revenge of the Sith. This is just a really depressingly sad part. What makes it even worse is when you've gotten to know the characters better outside of the films, and when you know the clone side of it too. Actually, let's move on to the next category before we all start crying. Next up is The Clone Wars, which has generated a lot of tears, I'm sure. First up we have the MVP 99. I feel like he is just an universally loved character, but I'm actually happy that 99 never got to see the destruction of Tipoca City. Still doesn't make his death any less sad though. Then we're moving to one of the darkest arcs in the Clone Wars, the Umbara arc. The first sad moment in this arc is Hardcase's death. He is also such a lovable character, but at least because of him, the others had a chance to survive. In connection to this, I will have to show you something. Here is a phone case that I got made for my old phone. And you know, it's a hard case. You see? Hard case quote on a hard case. Okay, let's pretend that never happened. Moving on. There is another sad moment. Now all dogs are barking again. There's another sad Umbara moment, which is Waxer's death. Not just because it's Waxer and we love him, but also it's the circumstances that he and all those other clones had to die because of Dexter's emo cousin. I refuse to say his name. And I can't go on to name every single clone death, but another one I have to mention is Heavy. Through the episodes that follow the Domino Squad, we get to know these clones better, and to see them die is not very fun. Then we have a sad moment that I feel like often gets overlooked, and that is Satine's death. And honestly, it's not so much the fact that Satine dies. I mean, if you are a controversial Mandalorian leader and don't wear any armor, you might not be surprised when someone kills you. What makes this so sad is Obi-Wan's loss. Obi-Wan goes through so many losses in his life, and this is just one among many. It still doesn't make it any less sad. Then I have to mention the Zillo Beast. Everything about those two Zillo Beast episodes is just really sad. I don't want to talk about it. Let's move on. Then we have the moment when Ahsoka leaves the Order. I know that a lot of people see this as one of the saddest moments in Star Wars, so I had to include it. When I first saw the Clone Wars, I had been spoiled that this would happen, so I knew it was coming at some point, and I had prepared myself for something completely devastating, so I guess that made the whole thing a bit less sad for me. There's still a lot of straight up depressing stuff in this arc, and I talked more about it in my The Clone Wars chronological rewatch, so check that out if you want. Then we have the last category before the big four. It's time to look at some Rebel stuff. We will start with the big one, Kanan's death, and what can you say? It's definitely one of the most impactful death scenes in Star Wars. That is, if you like Rebels and the characters in it. But still, it's so well done. And the little detail that his vision is restored in his final moments is just so heartbreaking, but also so perfect. And then seeing the aftermath and what the others go through after they lost him is just... it feels so empty without him. Then I also have to mention Maul's death. And even though Maul is not a very good person per se, some things in his life were definitely out of his control. And since his death isn't like a huge victory for the heroes in the story or anything like that, I feel like there is some room to appreciate Maul's legacy and the fact that in the end his life is pretty tragic as well. It's just overall a very well done emotional sequence. And lastly, for Rebels we have Vader versus Ahsoka. And this is where Ahsoka learns the identity of Vader, and let me tell you, it is sad. So actually depressing. I've said sad so many times in this video already. Someone please stop me. Then we get to what are for me the saddest moments in Star Wars. This is where men cried. And me also. Number 4. Mando gives over Grogu to Luke. This man, a bounty hunter, a Mandalorian, with a heart hardened through his life, sees something in this little creature, and that bond between Grogu and Mando is pretty incredible. How Mando is ready to give up things that were sacred to him, like not removing his helmet so that others could see his face. And their goodbye in the season 2 finale, you feel like someone stabs you in the heart. It's how Mando removes his helmet, to let Grogu see his face, and how Grogu doesn't want to leave. I can't even. Let's just move on to number 3. Number 3. Five's death. This one got me real good. And that's not only because Fives is possibly my favorite clone, it's how tragic his death is. How lost and abandoned he feels in his last moments, how he gets shot down by one of his brothers, and how he had information that could have stopped Palpatine. This is of course again connected to Order 66 and the tragedy called the Grand Army of the Republic. Obviously it's not as big of a tragedy as the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise, but it's pretty close. Number 2. Victory and Death. Yes, I did just say that an entire episode of the Clone Wars is one of the saddest moments. It's so well done, but they did not go easy on us viewers. And what makes this so sad is the combination of Order 66 and the end of an era. This is it. No more Clone Wars. The imagery is what makes it. The heart of the Clone Wars, the clones themselves, the soldiers but also the victims of the war, dead. Gone. It represents the end of the Clone Wars, not just the war itself, but the entire era. And then of course it's followed up by Vader finding Ahsoka's sabers, getting goosebumps just thinking about it. And then finally, number 1, Anakin's fall. I won't go into too much detail on this, I would need to do an entire video about this, and I probably will at some point. But what makes Anakin's fall so tragic is that all he wanted to do was to save Padme. And there are so many points in Revenge of the Sith that are just straight up sad, like Anakin killing the younglings. I know it's one huge meme, but to me that has never really been funny. The entire final act of Revenge of the Sith is just very tragic. Knowing that he'll eventually be redeemed doesn't make things any easier either. It's crazy how much this fictional universe can really impact us. But with that said, these were some of the saddest moments in Star Wars. I'm sure there are a million more on the way, but this is what we got for now. I can't wait what I'll get to be sad about next. But now let's not be sad anymore. Here you go, watch this video right here where we are trying to figure out what would be the most important moment in each of the Star Wars films.